You know that second when you finish a high intensity interval and you're fully out of breath, but you know you have another one coming in a minute or two, and you want to try and get your heart rate down and recover as fast as possible? Well, typically, what do? You're going to try and slow down your breathing so you can recover and be ready for the next one. Well, it turns out that's the exact opposite of what you should do. So, in this video, I'll explain why and what technique you can use to speed up your recovery after a hard effort or an interval so that you can come back to baseline faster and get ready for the next one. So, what happens when you're exercising at high intensity is that your body is producing a lot of metabolites. It's producing CO2, hydrogen ions, inorganic phosphates, and those things need to be managed by the body. And one way that the body tries to maintain its internal balance, its homeostasis, is through breathing. So typically when you're doing a high intensity effort, you breathe hard, and most people think it's because you're lacking oxygen, but you're not actually lacking oxygen. There's lots of oxygen in your blood. If you put an oximeter on your finger, you'll see you're at 99%. That means that out of 100 molecules of, say, hemoglobin inside your red blood cells, the ones that carry the oxygen inside your blood, out of 100 of those taxis, 99 are actually full with oxygen. So there's lots of oxygen going around, and you actually have enough to do the work. But the reason you're breathing hard is actually because of the CO2 that your body produces at high intensity. CO2, like I said, is one of those metabolites that comes together with the higher intensity of effort. Not only does your body produce the CO2, but it actually also uses a buffering mechanism inside the blood that in itself produces more CO2. And that CO2 actually signals to your brain that you need to breathe more. So the increase in ventilation at higher intensities of effort is actually due to the accumulation of CO2 inside your body and inside your blood. And so at the end of a high intensity interval, like we were talking about just before, what's going on? You have a ton of CO2 that you've just produced. And if you want to recover faster, what we want to do is decrease that CO2 level as fast as we can to get back to baseline. But if you do what everybody does, and I used to do that as well, when I used to play rugby after a hard sprint, I would try to slow down my breathing so that my heart rate would go down. But it's actually the opposite, right? If you do that, what are you doing? You're just slowing down the process of getting rid of that CO2 that you just accumulated. And so instead, the best way to speed up your recovery after a hard effort is actually to hyperventilate in a controlled fashion. What I mean by that is hyperventilation can mean you lose control of your breathing. It just kicks up, and then you just lose control completely, and you start to shallow breathe. And this is not what you want to do. Here, what you want to do is keep taking deep breaths, but try to accelerate that breathing at the same time. So you're essentially going to increase tremendously the amount of air that you're moving. And if you do that for just 20 or 30 seconds, what's going to happen is that that CO2 level that was high at the end of the interval, at the end of the effort, because of the intensity, because of the buffering, is going to go down really quickly because we're getting rid of that CO2. And after 20 to 30 seconds of that controlled hyperventilation, you can actually slow down your breathing again, and you can almost breathe and talk normally at that point. Whereas if you were trying to slow down your breathing right after you finish the interval, at the 30-second mark, you're still struggling, you're still breathing, and you're still not as rested and as recovered as you could be. So here's a good exercise. Next time you do some high intensity intervals, the best thing is to try both approaches and to make up your own mind as to whether it works for you or not. So after the first interval, actually slow down your breathing and see how you feel after 30 seconds. And after the second interval, you do the opposite and you accelerate your breathing once you're done your intense effort. And you do that for 20 to 30 seconds, and then you see how you feel. And you could even repeat that 2 or 3 times throughout your session to compare the two and get a good idea of how this works. So this is one easy breathing tip that you can use. By the way, if you want to go further into respiratory training, train your diaphragm, train your muscles, train your coordination and your awareness, I just released a brand new respiratory training program. It's called Breath Master. You can find the link in the description below. So if you want to train your breathing, if you want to support the Upside Strength channel and all the work that we do, make sure you join Breath Master, and I'll see you in the next video.